So we're going to talk about whether games really need blockchain. My guess is this is a very biased audience because we're probably here because we do believe games need blockchain, but we're going to try and be as unbiased in having a discussion about it as possible. Before getting started, we'll just go around and introduce the panel here, so make sure you guys know who everyone is. So Tiago, why don't you start? Maybe just talk a little bit about yourself, your background in games, what you've been doing in blockchain games specifically, and then we'll go around.
Sure, absolutely. So sorry, I'm here again. I'm Tiago. I began making games when I was 7, when you simply couldn't have side-scrolling on a microcomputer, and most games were done in assembly. And fast forward to here, I've worked in a lot of well-known games and franchises. From mobile, I would have to say that games I've played that are most successful are probably Stumble Guys with 100 million DAUs, and Call of Duty that some of you may know. But more recently, I took the challenge of starting a social sandbox MMO called Today, where we want to leverage the power of creativity by creating tools so that people can create their own and build their own communities and explore a brand new world that we are delivering. And we offer some Web3 elements to it.
Switch. Is that working now? All right. Hi, I'm Jose from Delphi Digital. So Delphi has kind of 3 parts of the business: a research arm, which probably we're most well known for, that services kind of institutions and investors in the space. Then we have a venture arm, which is a prop capital fund where we've made over 100 investments, a lot of them in gaming. It's one of the areas that we're most excited about. And then we have a third arm called Delphi Labs, which is basically a protocol R&D lab. So we started off doing consulting with projects like Axie Infinity and Yield Guild and Aave, Compound, Balancer, a bunch of projects like that. And then we moved to kind of building our own projects. The connection with gaming, I've always been a gamer. All the other co-founders, my other co-founders at Delphi are also big-time gamers, all genres like MMOs, FPSs, everything. So that was one of the areas that we were most interested in from the beginning when we entered crypto. We kind of saw the potential there. And we caught on to Axie Infinity very early, helped design kind of the mechanism design there, and also invested in the seed round, and then backed a bunch of other cool games like Illuvium and guilds like Yield Guild and stuff like that.
Hello everyone, my name is Solange Gueiros. I am a developer advocate at Chainlink Labs. I used to travel around the world to go to conferences to teach developers how to create your first smart contract and how to use the Chainlink services. And Chainlink has the goal of connect the world that's not on blockchain with the world that we have, the real world outside. So we have a lot of services to do this kind of connections, to bring data to use inside blockchains and to bring and to have the data with games.
Cool, yeah, I'm Stefan. I'm one of the co-founders of Gnosis, and we've been building a lot of different software in the space, starting with prediction markets, but we've also been working on wallet software, which I think is also quite interesting in the context of gaming. And yeah, we also operate our own network, Gnosischain, on which quite a few games are operating, like for example, the Dark Forest game, which I think became a very popular game among the Ethereum community. And yeah, it's a great venue here, and very happy to be here and see what the discussion brings.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. I'm Ron Shephered. I was most recently at Polygon. I started my career in media and investment banking, and then about 12 years ago, I got my dream job to go work at Electronic Arts. I'd played first-person shooters and sports games my whole life, and I got to basically play games at work and do deals for all the studios that I loved, like FIFA and DICE and others. So I did that for a while, and then I spent about 6 years at Unity going behind the scenes and working with game developers and hardware platforms, so working with Apple, Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft and Sony, helping them integrate Unity real-time 3D solutions and getting more games on the platform. And at Polygon for the past year, I was basically building out a partnerships team, right, helping developers on board and then connecting the ecosystem so developers could build, launch, and scale dApps. So that's my story. But really, I'm here because I love games, and I've enjoyed seeing games evolve. And this is one of the inflection points where we see games doing something different, right? Like changing some of the problems we've had in the industry around identity, digital ownership, entitlement. So would love to get each of your thoughts in the very beginning about where do you see the value really for blockchain in games, right? Games is a massive industry, like we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. Where does blockchain add value in your mind, primarily for games? Zay, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. The value in blockchain for games, for me, the main, like in one word, or two words rather, would be 3 words: digital property rights. So just the idea that you're able to actually truly own both the items in games and eventually actually the IP and the games themselves. And I think it's worth noting that we're very far from that right now, because right now, even if you own an NFT that exists in a game, you're still dependent on the game publisher honoring that representation and the utility of the NFT in the game, right? It's sort of no different from USDC and Circle. If they choose to blacklist your USDC, then you can no longer honor it from the Circle treasury, and so it's valueless, right? And it's the same with most NFTs in most games right now. And the same thing with governance as well. Like the stuff that most the stuff that most crypto games govern is like treasury parameters at best and staking rewards, which are like at best tangential to the games themselves. So I think right now we're kind of far from the end game of it. But for me, the end game of it, there's like 2, I guess, interesting avenues that I think are worth exploring. The first one is truly on-chain games, so similar to Dark Forest that runs on Gnosis. Those are really interesting because you really don't have the need to trust like a game publisher, or for the game publisher to like honor your asset in the game, right? They run on-chain, governance can happen on-chain, and the NFTs themselves don't have any kind of counterparty risk or counterparty dependency. But obviously those are limited right now by the scalability of current solutions, and that's going to evolve over time, but you're never going to be able to run an entire game on-chain. It just doesn't make any sense. And so I think the second avenue that's interesting is kind of the idea of like open source games, where basically because the game code is open source, the assets themselves, there's a credible neutrality to it, and the developer, the publisher can't go rogue and overstep because they can be kept in check by the fact that the game is open source and can be relaunched or like forked by someone else, right? And there's loads of really cool stuff that this enables, from things like permissionless expansion packs, right? You actually don't have to wait for the game publisher to write an expansion. Like permissionlessly, developers could build their own expansions. And there's interesting games experimenting this right now. EVE Online is actually experimenting with this, which is one of the games with the most advanced economies. And I think it opens up interesting concepts like governance, being able to elect the game developer, right? And also having the ability to sort of elect other game developers to build expansion packs, to build like private servers, modding, stuff like that. And so I think the value of gaming is those digital property rights, and we're not there yet, but I think like we're kind of, the reason people are so excited about this is because they can see the potential of that, right? As people spend more and more time in the metaverse, it makes sense that they want to truly own the items and also like the value that they create for these games.
Really interesting. I mean, I love the idea of open source games, right? Like mods have been around forever, but it's painfully hard to do them. Solange, what do you think?
You told almost everything, but let's, when we talk about digital rights, we can talk about how you use this on blockchain, that's the NFTs, this is the most used. But another point that I think that can be so useful, so interesting in games, is how you can define the rules of a game in a smart contract and use this with the smart contract, how we have the game interacting or being a smart contract and all the rules, all the interactions being over there, and you can prove this, you can have this forever, and you use this in the way that you like. But for me, the connection between games and smart contract is so powerful.
Yeah, I actually recently had a discussion with a friend of mine about like games, on-chain games and so on. We one kind of conclusion we came to is like kind of blockchain themselves are sort of games, right? Like even Ethereum yourself, you can see almost like a game. We are all players on Ethereum. We all have some stake in it, and we try to shape the game itself. And I think this is because it's an open source, permissionless platform that we can all contribute to. And I think that's the biggest power that we have, like building something where ultimately everyone who is interacting on it can also shape it in some way and form. Not everyone has to. Some people are just passive consumers. But it allows everyone the gate to participate and shape the future of the game itself. And so I think that's for me like the most powerful play that gaming on-chain can have. That maybe not as complex as Ethereum, but like kind of a subset of this, allowing people to participate. And I know there's quite a few games that are already kind of successful in the Web2 world that are exploring like, okay, like we have our own economy in our game, and but we are the ones we're creating all the items and everything, and there are potential ways to open this up for others to participate in this. And I think for this is very important also what José mentioned, like you have to have pure on-chain games where the rules are really clear, and it's not like you basically trust like a third party again in order to obey those rules. But that's what I find the most fascinating.
Conversation about this being one whole big game, like multiplayer, online, virtual worlds, virtual currencies. I think that's really true because for once it's permissionless, right? It's been happening in games, but in a very micro level. Super interesting. Tiago, why don't you go next?
I'm going to be the odd guy here because I do believe that digital properties being quite overrated when it comes down to the main motivator for people to want to play blockchain games. Another thing is, we mentioned open source. Believe me, I come from Unix and Linux communities, GPL, working on open source projects. I've participated in a lot of development on that front, and I still don't believe that it's a good use case for games, because imagine like having a partner like Sony that is releasing, like I recently worked on a game that's it's being released with PSVR 2. You can never get away with publishing source code on an open source patent, license that has really strict proprietary technological trade secrets. That's going to be very difficult. So you're going to be really niched on a very subgenre. Another thing is if you work with I don't know, brand franchise or whatever, you potentially want to have some kind of control on what people are going to do with your brand. How are they going to convey the image and the ethos of your own brand? You don't want like your brand to be connected with more shady stuff potentially. So an all up for grabs, I don't think that's really a solution. I think that I don't know what's the best thing. I think we need to evaluate because, again, a lot of people are being put away, like gamers, traditional gamers are being put away from the Web3 space because there's a lot of distrust. So until something comes along that people like say, okay, this is a great example of how we should do things, and it's easy enough and people can perceive the value. In the other talk, I was talking about memories, like NFTs being kind of memorability from your experience. It's like when you take pictures, when you're hanging out with your friends and special moments in your life. I mean, you've put so many hours playing a game, why not keep something that it's yours to hold forever, even if it has or not value. That's where I find that property works well, and not necessarily in 100% of cases. Another thing would be like the collectible aspect. As someone who's been in a gaming space for a while, and someone who enjoys like trading card games, that's a good example. Like owning your own collections, not just for making a quick buck, or for the collections alone, I think that's also a really good and easy usage of things.
Building on that, I think that's a really interesting point. So like, maybe I'll just open this to any one of you. What do you think are some of the blockers right now that are getting in the way of adoption for blockchain in games, either from a developer perspective or the point you made, right, which is from a user perspective? Like, I like the idea of there needs to be some inherent value of like trust, which might not exist in the way gaming is done today. But like, what are some of the other things that each of you is seeing that's a blocker to adoption or a blocker to scaling?
Can I start? Play to earn. Play to earn is a blocker. For me, it's a blocker.
Or say more.
Yeah, it's play to earn. I mean, buzzwords are a block. We're saying that. Marcus said that. Sometimes using the metaverse is something that's not tangible, right? There's not metaverse should be one thing, but there's not one thing. There's millions. Everyone has their own metaverse, so we cannot use those words because they're just things that you write on a whiteboard to sound pretty. Scammers are screwing things up for everyone as well. So if you ask like 100 people in the street about Web3, if they know what Web3 is all about, I'm pretty sure that a lot of them will mention scams and people losing stuff, being robbed, you know? So until we come up with a very a more solid and stable image, I think that's a huge blocker for people. It's like I try to hire people, and the moment they hear Web3, they're like, oh, no, I'm gonna pass. And that's not a good thing. That's not a good business card for this kind of technology. So definitely needs to be something done on that respect.
Well, for example, I'd like to talk a bit about dynamic NFTs. Imagine that you are in a game, you are playing a game, you have your character, you have all the achievements of your character. And if this is represented by an NFT, a dynamic NFT, every time that you pass to a new phase, every time that you won a new weapon, whatever, this will be inside your NFT. And it can be including one NFT inside other. So how cool and how important this can be for a game, especially to represent this or to trade a part of this, wherever. I think this can be so useful and so amazing for games.
Yeah, I definitely think the scammers aren't helping, for sure, and all that side of things. I think UX is a big problem. Like, you can't really expect people to like store their own seed phrases, right? Just like with every other like crypto sector, not just gaming. But it's really unrealistic to expect that. The signature UX is still janky, having to have like whatever the native token is to pay gas. There's all these like relatively simple problems, but that are hard to solve. They just take time. I think another part of it though is sort of there's a natural, when there's like a new medium, which I believe Web3 gaming is, there's always an adaptation period as people kind of adjust to the medium, right? And right now you're seeing experimentation on all areas of like the design trade-off, right? You're seeing everything from fully on-chain games, you know, and some of them are very like technical facing, like Paradigm's new game. Some of them are easier to use, to like games where almost none of it runs on-chain and you just have like NFT representations that you can settle onto the chain every once in a while, and then you have, you know, really good game. I mean, over the last sort of 2 years, we've seen some of the highest quality founders in any vertical are in the gaming space. You know, people who are at top studios, who have experience building top games, and they're all like seeing this slightly differently. And I think adjusting to the medium is really important. Another thing is, yeah, because there's also an interesting debate, which maybe we could open up, which is the idea of some people think that the game should always be separate from the economics, right? From the economic game, and that's important to preserve like the sanctity of the game and the skillfulness of the game, right? And so we have a portfolio company called Noor. They're really big believers in this, to have like the game needs to be the game. It needs to be pure skill. Like in a football game, you can't buy like a jetpack that just like jets you across the field, straight into a goal. And like you can't have that in a game either. You have to have the game be purely skilled. And then you have like other games for those people. So you have like a speculator game, which is like playing the auction house in World of Warcraft or in EVE, right? Some people love that. Then you have like the collector's game, right? People want to collect epic moments from different games. So you break out the meta games and let each people compete in each one without kind of influencing each other. Yeah, I got lost with where I was going there. But basically, I just think there's a lot of experimentation happening. It's kind of natural to see. Oh yeah, one last thing, just the users in crypto, we don't have like a lot of users, right? There's maybe like a couple million active monthly wallets, which is like tiny, but they are the wealthiest user group in any space ever, right? Like the Illuvium sale sold out like 60 million with something like 600 addresses, right? It's like it's never been seen before. And so I think that's another challenge, is like how do you build games for the users that are here now, rather than these like mainstream adoption games where you have all these UX barriers because people don't want to store their keys and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, just yesterday I gave a presentation where I was complaining about like the adoption of crypto actually, and we took a look at like DebRadar, and you see people on blockchain, they do only two things, like DeFi, trading tokens and NFTs, or games. So those are the two main use cases right now for blockchain, but there are actually a lot more people playing games than actually doing DeFi interactions. So I think that's the biggest contribution that games can bring, is like onboard a lot new users to our ecosystem. And of course, there are many questions of like, how do you actually do the onboarding? Are people actually interacting on custodial, and so on and so on. But I think it will become, and that's what we see as well, like becomes increasingly simpler to develop blockchain games. So there's lots of game engine developed, like for example, we talked about the Dark Forest game. The company that initially created it, they're now creating a ZK game engine that allows others to easily build fully on-chain games. And so I think we'll see soon like an even bigger explosion of games that can truly run on blockchain and that can be extended by anyone. And I think that's super exciting. And I think that will be actually one of the main adoption drivers for people actually interacting in our ecosystem. And I think that's a massive contribution, of course.
Yeah. I'd like to do one more comment. I'm visualizing a future on where the people will choose our systems, our games, our process that have blockchain because they trust on this, because it's better for the society.
That was really interesting. I mean, really good points across play to earn and the point that Zay was making and you made. I think it's the way I look at it is there's a couple of things going on. One is, games are, a lot of new technologies end up starting as toys, right? We see that across everything, and games by nature are fun. Games in my mind are also like, I like to call games like the thin edge, the wedge. If you think of any new platform, any new hardware, like games is always one of the first things you see happening there. And I think that's for a few reasons. One is it's fun, but also because I think game developers are just early adopters of technology. And they're generally okay taking risk, right? They're okay taking risk to try out a new platform, whether that's mobile or AR or VR or Web3. I think one of the things, and this is the point you were making, right, around, and you were making about like just this plain vanilla play to earn, or also like, how scaling happens. It kind of takes me back to like the early days of mobile, right? There were games where they were all like really simple game mechanics. There was Flappy Bird and there was like paper toss, but we were playing them because there weren't any great alternatives, right? And I think it took 2 or 3 years for a few things to change. Like the hardware got better. AWS happened, right? So you could now get distributed cloud and you could basically deploy anywhere. And you had location data, right? So that enabled things like Pokemon Go and Clash of Clans, like with better graphics. And that changed the trajectory. Like suddenly you had $1 billion game, and then you had $10 billion games, and then you had a $100 billion industry. What do you feel like, as you all look at the world from your perspectives, are some of the missing pieces of the puzzle, right? We've already got one piece, which is we've got, like you said, like we've got like this really, really dedicated, enthusiastic base of crypto users. We've already got game developers making games. Like, what are the missing 1 or 2 or 3 pieces of the puzzle for this to become like mobile or like console or just something completely different but very relevant?
I don't know, but I think in blockchain we are improving like the usability, and this is a part that in game it's so amazing, so important. And when we have the merge of this to have the same usability of games in other blockchains part, this can be better, something like that.
I think we've covered pretty much what you've mentioned UX, you've mentioned UX. UX is like one of the most important. When it comes down to having a Web3 blockchain gaming experience be as simple as getting a game from Steam, that will be something. Because right now, we still have the adoption problem. How do you convey the idea that, hey, one, having a wallet, and two, adding a wallet to this game is actually a good thing to do, right? I think that's a massive challenge that we all have right now towards the massification of this kind of games.
Let me maybe ask the question a different way. So I was talking about this with someone at dinner yesterday. There's already 2 billion gamers, right? There's 2 billion gamers on the web, on PC, on mobile, and console. Do you feel like there's an opportunity to take blockchain technology in that direction and like have 100 million or 200 million people interacting with crypto and blockchain? Is that a viable strategy, or do you feel like we have to go and build an entirely new category of gaming, or are they the same thing? Like, we would love to get your thoughts on that.
I don't know what to answer that. I don't know if there's actually a linear answer to that, because yeah, you have tons and tons of people playing games in all different mediums. And it comes down to the theme of this talk, like, do games really need blockchain? No, they don't. But you could have it, right? Like, do games need microtransactions? No, they don't. But they still have it, right? Do games need free-to-play models? No, but they're there. So I guess it comes down to we're like surfing the wave, and we're experiencing this new moment pretty much like every other, like free-to-play. When free-to-play came down, it's like, it's all scammers, they just want the money. But a lot of people are playing. Like, I worked on a game called 8 Ball Pool, a mobile game. And I remember we changed the game, but the game was web only in the beginning, and we moved to mobile. And every time people complained that, oh, you guys this, you guys that, our KPIs went up. I mean, we're bound to do something right. And the industry gave this momentum with new business models, new technology, and I'm pretty sure that it will happen with Web3. I think you just needed to give it more time, get rid of the crypto bros and the scammers and all that. And so as soon as we have a lot more good content, good games that people actually want to play just for the games themselves, then we're doing something about it.
Yeah, I think maybe we'd also like to compare to other developments we see in blockchain. Like, for example, we saw a lot of teams building DAO software, right? And it was always like the full stack. Like, yeah, we always have a solution for everything, like Aragon, DAO stack, from A to Z. And I would say at this point it's clear that they all failed because they built everything. And so I think, of course, we have games that work, and I think in games it's much more natural to have like a full experience built like by one team. But I think for the like real great games to emerge, there will be rather an ecosystem than like one team building everything full stack top down. And I could also see that instead of like having like this one top tier, like a top down approach, we will have more elements being integrated in many different parts of our lives. So I don't know, like why if you, I don't know, we have this like sweat coin or whatever, like the way how you behave, you can get additional, I don't know, skills in something else. Like this is all like becomes like one one kind of entire game engine where everything you do can kind of be reflected in something else, right? Like we have co-ops. Yeah, you've been to certain events. Okay, maybe then you get like some upside in a certain game. And it can be completely interoperable, and I think that's kind of where we will see this becoming extremely powerful. And then it will not be this one single event or this one single game that will be the killer game that will drive all the adoption. It's rather like really a big mix of the ecosystem playing together, ultimately lifting a lot of people into the ecosystem.
So moving on to the games in this games piece of this panel, like what are some of the games that each of you is enjoying right now? What are the games that you like, and what do you like about them? Blockchain games.
Well, I've said this before on the last talk. Decimated is the game that I'm really eager to have it fully developed because it should be a really great game. I mean, I'm biased. I mostly play AAAs, but I think it's a great example of how you can still have at the same time a great AAA concept, but have a Web3 element with it. I think they've been doing a great job at doing the game. So.
I'm biased. Yeah, like there's a nice new game, Ethereum, running on Gnosischain, and it's quite interesting. It's a strategy game, and you have to do a buy-in, similar to poker, but it goes on for actually quite some time, and it's about building alliances. So there's the on-chain part, which obviously enforces the game rules, but much more important is actually also the off-chain part. You have to actually talk to people, you have to build alliances in order to win this game. And you have, similar to poker, you have always the opportunity to say, okay, I'm out, I take my money with me, or I continue playing the next round. So it's like, it's a very cool game. I like it a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, biased as well, but I've been playing some crypto unicorns. It's a portfolio company. Yeah, we're a fan of that. I think there is no like current crypto game that's really a game that I'd recommend to like someone that has no interest in crypto whatsoever and has like a little bit of time to game and they just want to have fun. I think that's kind of normal given the age of the industry. But to me, kind of the success of the current crop of crypto games, in spite of kind of how janky the experiences still are, shows the potential that the industry has, right? I think a lot of people look at the success of Axie and others, and they're just like, you know, this game isn't fun or whatever. Which, you know, people have different opinions on that. They have a pretty rabid community, but I think that's actually more like a proof of. Like when you look at an industry and there's like a product that isn't that good that has a lot of traction, that's, to me, it's like same with AMMs or Uniswap, right? It shows how much interest there is in that product, that people are willing to put up with a crappy experience just to use it. And I think that's kind of like where we're at now with crypto gaming.
Well, I need to confess that I don't have so many time to play games, but. Yes, I like to have more. I really like to have more. But there are one kind of game that every conference that has this, I love it, is the games that you can interact inside the conference. We have some games that you can scan a QR code and talk with each participant in that conference and change information with them and with another and with another. And this kind of game that is promoting the network between the participants is the game that I saw in some conference and I really love it.
Awesome. So we just have under 4 minutes left here. I'd like to open it up to the audience here, and if any of you have a question for this great panel, please feel free to come up here and ask them, or if you want to add something based on your own experience, please do that as well. Does anyone have a question in the audience?
The question is, what are you thinking about like betting for the Web3 games, and like, is it any future? Like, are you considering this as like, I don't know, something that could attract more interest from Web3 gamers to Web3 games, something like this?
Yes, yeah, so the question was how we see betting relating to games and if betting would make games more interesting. You guys want to answer first or should I go? Okay. So, I mean, obviously we have also a background in betting with prediction markets. And I think wherever people have strong opinions, it's actually very interesting to make people put money where their mouth is. And I think in games also, people have strong opinions. Or like we see this also actually like when we see like Twitch streams, for example, like people see this as a sport. Like esports obviously is a sport. And obviously betting works super well in sports. It will, in my view, also work super well in esports. And given that we will have games on chain, it makes sense to add some spice to it by adding betting elements to it. It could be also interesting in terms of in-game governance as well. So deciding on what the future of the game should be like. I think there are many ways. Yeah, betting could be really enriching the experience.
I definitely agree. I think right now crypto's killer app, for better or for worse, is speculation. And betting is part of that, you know, whether it's trading altcoins or NFTs, which are like altcoins with pictures, right? They're referred to as some people, or betting and games themselves in crypto tend towards that kind of more financially motivated. Yeah, I think definitely plays a role. And I see it all as like eventually kind of being one thing, one experience.
Well, I feel like, you know, we're already seeing some really interesting like predictive market work happening with blockchain. I think the blockchain just makes everything more accountable, right? Because if you are making a prediction, it's on the chain, and I think it's much more verifiable. I think games and betting have had a long history. I think it's generally been determined by the fact that there's a lot of regulation around it. When I was at EA, we looked at gaming many times, and we ran away every time. Right, because it just complicates it. So I think, at least in the American, regulatory environment right now, it's going to be a while before people go there because crypto is already under so much scrutiny. That said, I feel like there's some inherent benefits in crypto which make it really easy to actually make it happen. Right, all the way from placing a bet, verifying the winner of the bet, to actually making the monetary exchange happen. It's really hard in Web 2. Right, just making all those hoops happen. So yeah, great question. I do think there's a future. I just don't think it's imminent right now. And with that, I think we're at time here. I really want to thank this panel for a great conversation. Hope you all enjoyed it and learned something, and thanks for having us. Cheers.